Sedans used to define car brands, but some were so bad they nearly destroyed them. In this video, we're breaking down 10 cars that looked like smart moves, but turned into reputation killers. One even forced its brand to abandon sedans entirely after just 2 years. Number 10. 2020 Buick Regal. First on our list is a car that represented the quiet, final breath of passenger cars for a historic American brand, the Buick Regal. After 2017, Buick was all in on SUVs, and this last-ditch effort, a rebadged sedan from the German brand Opel, was its final sedan offering. But this handsome European import had a fatal flaw that had nothing to do with the car itself. It came as a handsome liftback and a rugged Tour X wagon. The idea was to offer European flair to a brand losing its traditional bias. It launched with the starting MSRP of $24,990 for the base liftback, powered by a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4, pumping out 250 horsepower. The reality was a car no one asked for in a market that had abandoned sedans. Merely 90% of Buick's sales in 2019 were SUVs, and the Regal sales were down almost 20% year over year. It was a decent car without a country and without a customer base. Its quiet discontinuation in 2020 marked the end of an era, leaving Buick as an SUV-only brand in North America and closing the book on its long history of making sedans. But while the Regal was a good car in the wrong market, our next sedan was a beautiful contender that looked ready to take on the German giants, only to be crippled by its own questionable quality. Number 9. 2024 Jaguar XE. At number 9, we have a car that was supposed to be a British bulldog, ready to fight the Germans, but ended up as a cautionary tale. The Jaguar XE. Launched to take on the juggernaut BMW 3 Series, the XE was praised for its sharp handling and beautiful styling. But while it had the moves of a champion, its beauty was only skin deep, and what was underneath would prove to be its undoing. With a starting price of $35,895 for a base model with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder making 240 horsepower, and options up to a 3-liter supercharged V6 pumping out 340 horsepower, it was priced to compete. It was meant to bring Jaguar back into the mainstream luxury conversation, but the promise was only skin deep. While it drove well, the XE was plagued by a lackluster interior, notoriously buggy infotainment systems, and the brand's reputation for questionable reliability. Sales told the story. After a hopeful start in 2017 with over 9,000 units sold, numbers collapsed, failing to even sell 5,000 units in 2018 or 2019. Buyers just weren't willing to gamble on a Jag when the German competition was so polished. The XE's failure wasn't just a missed opportunity. It cemented Jaguar's struggle to escape its niche status. While Jaguar struggled with its reputation, our next car was a victim of the opposite problem. A German brand trying so hard to appeal to Americans that it stripped its car of any identity whatsoever. Number 8. 2022 Volkswagen Passat. Our number 8 spot goes to a car that was specifically designed for American tastes, but ended up with no taste at all. The Volkswagen Passat. To chase sales, VW decided to create a separate, cheaper, and larger Passat for North America, different from the European model. In their attempt to conquer America, VW made one fatal miscalculation that stripped the car of its very identity. With a base price starting at $19,995, it offered a 2.5-liter 5-cylinder engine, putting out a modest 170 horsepower, and came standard with features like dual-zone climate control. It was built in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as part of a strategy to sell 800,000 vehicles a year in the U.S. The fatal flaw was that in making it American, they stripped it of its German soul. Critics and buyers found it bland and uninspired compared to its rivals, and even its European counterpart. It was a car that existed without passion, and the sales reflected that. By 2019, VW sold just over 14,000 Passats in the US. Its failure to connect with buyers was a costly lesson in brand identity, forcing VW to quietly end its American production in 2022 to focus on SUVs. But as bad as it is to build a car nobody wants, what about a car that everybody wanted? Coming up next is a sedan that was a massive sales success, only to be executed by its own parent company. Number 7. 2020 Ford Fusion. At number 7 is a car that didn't fail because it was bad, but because its own company gave up on it, the Ford Fusion. For years, the Fusion was one of America's most popular and stylish family sedans, with sales peaking at over 300,000 units in 2014. This car was a massive success story. So what could possibly have gone so wrong that Ford would kill one of its most popular vehicles? It was a genuine competitor to the best from Japan, with a competitive starting price of $21,900 for the S model, which came with a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine making 170 horsepower. But its success couldn't save it from a massive corporate strategy shift. In 2018, Ford announced it was killing its entire sedan lineup in the US to focus on profitable trucks and SUVs. The Fusion was the last car standing, and its production officially ended on July 31st, 2020. Its death wasn't a rejection by buyers, but a decision from the top. It was a rolling symbol of the end of the American family sedan, a move that sent a clear message to car buyers: if you want a sedan, go shop somewhere else. Ford's decision was a cold, calculated business move. But our next car proves that even when you build a truly brilliant, universally praised performance sedan, sometimes the brand's own reputation can be an anchor that drags it to the bottom. Number 6. 2023 Kia Stinger. Coming in at number 6 is a car that proved that even when you build a fantastic car, the badge on the hood can be a curse. The Kia Stinger. Launched in 2017, the Stinger was a shock to the system, a rear-wheel drive performance sedan. This car won awards and stunned critics, but it had one fatal flaw it could never overcome: the logo on its hood. Base models started around $32,800 with a 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder producing 255 horsepower. But the real star was the GT model with a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6 pumping out 365 horsepower that could take on BMW and Audi for a starting price of just $39,250. But its fatal flaw was that it was a Kia. Consumers struggled to see past the budget brand reputation and pay a premium price. After a strong first year with over 16,000 sales, the numbers steadily declined, dropping to just over 5,000 by its final year. The Stinger was a critical darling but a commercial flop. Its discontinuation in 2023 marked the painful death of a brilliant idea that was simply too ambitious for its own brand. The Stinger was a case of the badge being the problem, but our number 5 car had the opposite issue. It was an engineering masterpiece from a legendary luxury brand that still couldn't convince buyers it was the real deal. All right, we're halfway through our list of modern automotive train wrecks. These cars didn't just miss the mark, they left scars on the car world that you can still see today. If you're enjoying this look into what not to do when running a car company, do us a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out, and make sure you won't miss what we dive into next. Now, back to the list. Number 5. 2020 Cadillac CT6. Kicking off the top 5 is a car that was an engineering masterpiece, undone by a fatal identity crisis. The Cadillac CT6. This was meant to be Cadillac's flagship, launching with a base MSRP around $54,000. It was a legitimate masterpiece of engineering. But it was torpedoed by a single, crucial problem that GM just couldn't solve. It was a technological marvel, built on a sophisticated platform to finally rival the German Titans. It even offered the incredible 4.2-liter Blackwing twin-turbo V8 engine, which pumped out 550 horsepower, though that version cost nearly $100,000. The problem was, it was a world-class sedan from a brand that hadn't convinced the world it was world-class. Sales were a disaster. In its best year, the CT6 sold just over 10,500 units in the US, while its main rival, the Mercedes S-Class, sold thousands more. In 2019, sales fell to just 7,951 units. GM pulled the plug in the US in 2020 due to the dismal sales and the need to retool the factory for electric vehicles. The CT6 was a brilliant failure that proved a great car can't save a brand that has lost its way. Cadillac's failure was a missed opportunity, but our next car represents a different kind of automotive sin. A decade of pure neglect that turned a once credible contender into a rolling relic. Number 4, 2024 Infiniti Q50. At number 4 is the car that represents a decade of neglect, the Infiniti Q50. When it launched for the 2014 model year, it was a credible contender, with a base price of about $37,150 and a standard 3.7-liter V6 engine that pumped out 328 horsepower. It started as a legitimate contender, but its killer wasn't a bad design or a poor engine. It was something far more insidious: neglect. For 10 years, as rivals from Germany and Korea reinvented themselves with new technology and designs, the Q50 remained almost entirely the same. Its fatal flaw was its stagnation. It became a relic in its own time. The once competitive sedan was left to wither on the vine, using outdated infotainment and powertrains while its competition lapped it repeatedly. This lack of evolution did serious damage to Infiniti's reputation, turning it from a genuine competitor into an afterthought in the luxury space. The Q50 became a rolling symbol of a brand that had lost its ambition. As bad as neglect is, our next car was a far more cynical failure. A blatant attempt to sell a cheap mainstream car in a luxury tuxedo, and it fooled absolutely no one. Number 3, 2022 Acura ILX. Cracking our top 3 is a car that was a cynical exercise in badge engineering. The Acura ILX. Launched with a starting MSRP of $25,900, it was supposed to bring young luxury buyers into the fold. It was supposed to be a gateway to the luxury brand for a new generation. But it was built on a lie that would ultimately poison the Acura name for years. The problem? It was barely more than a previous generation Honda Civic. Its base 2-liter SOHC inline-4 engine produced just 150 horsepower, and it shared its fundamental architecture with its mainstream sibling. Its fatal flaw was that it fooled no one. Reviewers and buyers immediately called it out for what it was: a cheap attempt to sell a mainstream car at a premium price. While Acura did make some changes over its life, it could never shake the reputation that it was based on old, non-luxury bones. The ILX diluted Acura's premium image for a decade until it was finally replaced by the Integra, a move that was a tacit admission of the ILX's failure. The ILX was a cynical cash grab, but the car at number 2 was a perfectly decent vehicle that became a symbol of its parent company, completely surrendering an entire generation of buyers to its rivals. Number 2, 2019 Chevrolet Cruze. At number 2, we have the car that symbolized General Motors completely giving up on an entire generation of car buyers: the second-generation Chevrolet Cruze. After the failures of the Chevette and Cavalier, the first-gen Cruze was a genuinely decent American small car. The second generation, launching with a base price around $16,620, and a new 1.4-liter turbocharged inline-4 putting out 153 horsepower, was meant to build on that. It was a perfectly decent car that should have been a success, but its demise came from a cold, calculated decision from the top that sent its buyers fleeing to the competition. The reality was a car that GM lost faith in almost immediately. As the market shifted to SUVs, GM saw the writing on the wall and pulled the plug. Production in the US ended in 2019 after just a few short years. This move, along with the cancellation of other sedans, effectively cemented the idea that GM could not or would not compete in the small car space. It was a self-inflicted wound that sent millions of budget-conscious buyers to Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai for good. But abandoning your customers is one thing. What about a car so catastrophically bad, so plagued with issues, that it became the poster child for modern failure and forced its brand out of the sedan market entirely? That's a number one. Number 1. 2017 Chrysler 200. And here it is. The number one sedan from the last decade that did the most damage to its brand has to be the poster child for modern automotive failure. The second-generation Chrysler 200. It launched with a slick Super Bowl ad, a base price of $21,995, and high hopes of finally competing with the best. It launched with a Super Bowl ad full of confidence and swagger, but behind the curtain was a mechanical and financial disaster so bad it would force Chrysler out of the sedan game entirely. The fatal flaw was that the car was a complete disaster and was plagued by a notoriously unreliable 9-speed automatic transmission that was paired with both the base 2.4-liter Tiger Shark 4-cylinder, making 184 horsepower, and the optional 3.6-liter Pentastar V6, which produced 295 horsepower. The transmission would shift poorly and often fail completely. Quality was suspect, and the design, while stylish, had a cramped back seat. After a brief spike in sales, the numbers collapsed. It was such a financial catastrophe that the CEO of Fiat Chrysler called the investment in the 200 one of the worst the company had ever made. Chrysler killed the car after just 2 model years, taking the Dodge Dart down with it and effectively erasing the company from the mainstream sedan market entirely. Tired of the failures? And check out what actually works. In our previous video, 10 best cars under $30,000 at Feel Expensive, we spotlight the hidden gems that drive like luxury without the premium price. Tap the link on screen or in the description. You'll want to see this list before you buy your next car.